Hey, welcome everybody. It's Monica Dubay, and I have a very special guest today, Morna Haist, and she's from Vancouver, British Columbia. Amazing, amazing, amazing person in the world that you want
Oh,
to know.
wow. Just telling me that we're live. That's cute.
Funny how that works.
Right?
So, really grateful to have you here, Morna. We've gotten to know each other a lot over this past year because I joined your program called Revolutionary Women. And it's been an extraordinary experience of meeting other women and coming together on our shared purpose and really bringing our work into the world in a way that's, really aligned with who we are. So let me just read your bio real quickly because people may not know who you are.
I'll just
Um,
sit back and listen.
okay. So Morna Hayes is a global leader in education and transformation for women agents of change. Her work empowers women change agents with the tools to transform themselves and the world. Morna is a lifelong student, practitioner, and pioneer in the art of participatory leadership and transformational change for personal, organizational, and social good. So, thriving at the edge of what's possible, she's co created innovative startups and experiments in the personal and social change in personal and social change. You've led countrywide and continent wide transformation projects and designed and led hundreds of transformational learning events and hosted thousands of women in Transformational Circle. So she's a graduate of the
Well,
Alia Institute.
the rest of it gets a little. Oh, shut up, Mona. Go on, Monica.
No, I'm going to say this stuff. This is all amazing. This is why I joined your program. I'm like, oh my God. She is a graduate of the Alia Institute, 18-month global leadership masterclass from Naropa University, from their authentic leadership program. You're also a certified NLP master practitioner and MBIT, multiple brains coach. Morna's the creator and founder. Most importantly to me, she's the creator and founder of Revolutionary Woman Global, a global ecosystem for personal and global transformation designed for women working at the edge of what's possible. A training ground, a community, a laboratory, a place to rest and revive, and an ecosystem for leading from the emerging and more beautiful, more sane, more joy filled, and connected future. Oh my gosh.
Don't we want that? Like, that's the future I want.
Oh my God. Of course we do. Yes.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you're a disruptor. You're, you're putting something new into place so that women can step into who they really are and their authenticity and bring their work into the world, without having to worry about the patriarchy or the rules or the way it has been up till now. And I think that's why I'm so attracted to you and your work, because that's what I'm all about as well.
I love that, Monica. I love that you're leading from that place, and it's such an interesting experience, isn't it, to hear ourselves through the lens of those bios that we create,
Yes.
and yes, I am a disruptor, and that's really been the theme of my whole life. I kind of started my journey. Well, I could go back to my journey, but one of the clear markers in this disruption was when I went into kind of formal study in my early 20s, and I studied social work and business, which was a very odd combination to most people, including myself. However, I've always been most interested in what happens at the margins and intersections of these systems that we've created. And these ideas, well, when I say we, it wasn't actually us, but that's a whole topic that I'm sure we'll get into. And so when it comes to the form of my work now and where that sort of 30-year journey, I guess, has taken me, is that I know as women, we need to be in spaces where we can have this experience of experimenting and discovering how we want to lead and what we want to create, because we are existing in a dominant patriarchal structure that says this is what a workday looks like, this is what an organization looks like, this is what leadership looks like, this is how we get stuff done, this is how we plan our things, da 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 da. And And so most of the women that I end up working with are women like you who are pioneering different ways of being into the world. And so we need a home to come together as disruptors. But equally, I think sometimes, if I think about some of the people in our community who we don't know what it means to lead outside of the patriarchy. And I'll leave it there so that we can, because I could talk about that forever.
Yeah. Well, it's like knowing that you have a voice inside of you that kind of answers to a different song in a way. You hear it differently yourself, and yet you're trying to fit it into what's already in place, and it doesn't work, and it's so frustrating, and it's it can cause us to really have nervous breakdowns and get super depressed because we don't belong in that patriarchy.
Completely, because if you think about the trajectory of, say, women's liberation, for example, and I put all of these in air quotes because we could do big talks on all of that.
Sure.
We weren't necessarily, we were liberated in some ways, but we were liberated straight into a system that we didn't create. And liberated into this idea that then the requirement is to become these kind of mythical superwomen that can squeeze all of these pieces of life. Like, no, thank you. What would a sane world look like that was co-created through a woman's lens? It would be a world that I believe allowed us to express ourselves in a way that actually works. And what I mean by that is, for example, I can't work 9 to 5. It doesn't work for me. I'm not a widget. I'm not producing widgets in a factory. I'm not a robot. We're still coding time based on the Industrial Revolution. Like, the way we construct the 8-hour day, and it's based on that Industrial Revolution way that we began to code time within a working week, within a period of time that things were produced within. And then we've extrapolated that across the way we do everything. And no, thank you. Even if I look at, I just planned out my next year. And after all of these years of figuring this out, it's my ideal frickin' plan. It's how I want to create in the world. It's in a way that honors me. It honors how I create. It honors the women I'm working with. It honors my family. It honors my values. And it does not look like sitting at my desk from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon attempting to produce.
Wow. That's no wonder I'm so uncomfortable trying to make it work the way that these males are like, you got to get up there and you got to get on all the social media platforms and you got to do this and you got to create this. And I'm like, if I had to do that, I would shoot myself. This is not who I am. It's like trying to fit myself into a bank on Wall Street, which I tried to do at one point.
I can imagine if I saw you in that bank, because I have these experiences with women all the time. I had an experience with a beautiful woman who I love to death, and we've known each other for years now. She came over to my house to sell me life insurance. And 5 minutes into the conversation, I looked her in the eye and was like, what the fuck are you doing? I don't know if we can say F-U-C-K on LinkedIn, but here I just said it.
I hope
Great.
so.
I don't know if it's going to be beeped out. But I had that. I'm like, no. And then she ended up selling me life insurance because I needed it. But 90% of that conversation, we were talking about her love of the medicine wheel and wanting to bring that teaching into the world. And every part of it lit up.
Wow.
And she was like, I don't know how to do it in a way that isn't attacking it like I've learned with everything.
Wow. So important. I think, first of all, when I did end up working on Wall Street, which I thought was great. I was just out of college. I couldn't get a job as a musician, which I had a master's in performance. And it was like, what do I do now? And I ended up in the tech field because that was when it was all burgeoning. And I'm like, this doesn't work for me. I'm wearing heels. I'm getting my nails done at lunch and I'm doing all that. And I'm like, who the heck is this? I got so depressed. It was like unbelievable. And thankfully, I was saved by my guidance, and I found my path, my spiritual path.
Mm.
But I think what's missing, and what was missing at that time, was I didn't feel like any woman belonged down there. It was so sexist, and it was so like anti-female. It's so like ugh, that I just couldn't believe anybody would want to work there, and I couldn't fit into it anyway. But what I felt was missing was I wanted a family. I wanted nature. I wanted to
Yeah.
live so I could go into the woods, and I'm from Maine originally. I'm like ending up in New York, but there was just that sense of being whole, and
Oh,
and I couldn't just put myself there and have it work, and they'd send me on these trips to go and train people, and I'd be like, even that seemed glamorous, traveling for work, business travel. I hated it. I'd get to the hotel and I'd be like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't belong in Texas, like in the middle of nowhere. Like, it was scary. It's really scary.
right.
Yeah, it was frightening. I was in my late 20s. I was like, what's happening? So I would like to ask you what can we're being challenged, I think, women these days, especially women, intuitive women, empathic and compassionate women, are really taking into consideration our hearts,
Mm.
our compassion for ourselves and our children,
Mm.
who seem to just be like, oh, they're supposed to just go to school. Well, that's not working so well, is it?
Yeah,
So
mine aren't. I've got 2 high school dropouts, and I'm very proud of it. Thank you very much.
I love that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But we can't fit into this status quo anymore. And in fact, we need to disrupt this whole system that doesn't
Yeah.
work anyway. So I see it in all different areas: healthcare, education, coaching, banking. This all has to, education, like especially higher education, isn't working either for women, or people who have any sensitivity whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's not working for men either. They're just maybe as a generalized rule not so in touch with how much it isn't working for them.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. That's the tragedy, is not that it isn't just a woman's issue. It's a human issue. And we all need to find the heart in ourselves and in our business, so we can bring about the transformation that needs to happen.
And this is where I'd love to riff off what you're saying, is that, and I want to make something clear for folks who are watching. The reason why I've chosen to work intentionally with women, and why my business is called Revolutionary Woman, is not so much through a feminist lens, even though I am a feminist. It's through the lens of what the times that we're alive in and what's occurring for us as a species. And the way that men have led, it was very, very useful for a long time. It kept us alive. I haven't thought of the list, but I'm sure there's a list of things it was useful for. But it was useful. It was fit for purpose for a while, especially when life was less complicated. And what I know for sure is that the kind of leadership, the dominant kind of leadership we have on the planet, and the patriarchal lens, which isn't actually even a male thing, it's just the system that we've actually all co-created and co-constructed. It's not fit for purpose for what is already occurring for us as a species, for example, pandemic times. And it's not fit for purpose as we experience more and more turbulence as a species, as climate change comes into full force. Here in BC, we've just been through an extreme weather event. Supermarket shelves are bare. We have supply chain issues. And this is going to become more and more of an everyday event for us as a species. There are predictions of up to 4.5 billion people being displaced by climate change, literally displaced as our coastlines shrink.
Wow.
And the reason why I am obsessed with working with women at the moment, and not just any women, but women who are at their evolutionary edge in terms of their ability to begin harnessing our whole intelligence. This is why I'm obsessed with women. There's an adult development model that I use that sits behind my work, and it's very well research based. And it basically shows how fit for purpose we are as a species. And it's very urgent that we go beyond black and white thinking. It's very urgent that we go beyond the dominant kind of thinking that we can see in our systems right now that lead us to other each other, and to have the kind of whatever the words that go with this that we're seeing during the pandemic of
Us and them.
us and them. All of this is a really big distraction from what we really need right now, which is the capacity for us to come together as one, and not in a way of bypassing each other, but actually, we've got these really naive political systems that say, hey, I've got the answer over here. My particular group has the answer. No, it doesn't. All of us have a little piece of the answer of this puzzle right now. And what I know for sure is that when we can bring our whole selves to the table, and for women, we actually are wired to have more direct access to our emotional landscape, which is so rich with information that has, under the patriarchy, been put over here as something that's no thank you. We don't want any of that, thank you. We've carved off so much of what makes us human. And the other reason, there are so many reasons why it's important for us to be on this evolutionary journey right now, and why I've deliberately positioned myself. I've been in the development space for 20 years. That stuff in my bio is true. I literally have worked with thousands of people, women.
Yeah.
And now I've positioned myself working directly with women like you who have been on this, you've spent your life in one way or another developing yourself to be fit for purpose at this time on the planet.
30 years at least.
That's right. That's right. And so I'm deliberately positioning my work at that evolutionary edge with women that I know we need to be leading right now, that are fit for purpose for the kind of leadership that we need right now. And to me, it's also not even necessarily about solving problems, but actually learning how to come together as a species. Because the reality is that so many of these things that we're facing are outside of our control, and we know we have this illusion of control as human beings, or that somehow we can dominate the planet and it will bend to our will. No, it's not going to do that. It's going to eat us for lunch. So we have to come into different relationship, and we're not going to be able to plan our way out of it. We're not going to be able to logic our way out of it. There's no 6 steps to saving the human race. It takes that navigation, and it also takes a real reverence for and I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop and come back to you, that we've in the adult development model that I use, which was developed at Harvard, it looks at the curriculum that we've constructed for ourselves as human beings. And is the curriculum fit for purpose to basically help create us into the level of human that we need to be? And the curriculum, especially in the Western world, the dominant curriculum we've created, is not fit for purpose. What it is fit for purpose is to get the kind of results that we see right now. Overwhelm, epidemic stress levels, people who trench into their position because they feel backed into a corner, people who are unable to access their full intelligence because their nervous system is so wired to how fucked up our dominant way of living is. And so I don't know where I'm going with all of that, other than I see a very urgent need for us to be upgrading our level of consciousness as a species right now.
Yeah, that's where I'm headed. I mean, I see that. I mean, the fact that you're from New Zealand too, right? So you're from a culture that's, I would say, I haven't been there, but I've been to Australia. I know a lot of New Zealanders. You guys are much more connected to the earth, I would say, to nature, to what's real.
Well, I'll speak to that for a moment, Monica, because it's really important. Like growing up at the edge of the planet, I grew up, New Zealand is at the edge of the planet and very isolated. And there's a psyche in New Zealand. There are some things that most New Zealanders that you find will be some element of this. Firstly, I don't really care who people are. I'll go up and have a conversation with the Queen. I'll go up and have a conversation with the person who's cleaning the floor. As far as I'm concerned, we're all the same level of human. You know what I mean? Like there's that. New Zealanders don't, because it's such a small, isolated country. I think Like I know Jacinda Ardern, for example, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, like, and I don't care. Like she's just a person, you know.
She's a
So
great.
there's that element of it, but there's also she's amazing. But there's also we call it the number 8 wire in New Zealand. Like because we're so isolated, people learn how to solve their own problems. There's nobody coming to rescue New Zealand.
Wow.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'll say is that New Zealanders work to live. So one of the problems with New Zealand is that people have their goal in life is to kind of have a semi-nice house and maybe like a batch, we call them, at the ocean where they can go. And we live for our holidays, and we want meaningful work. So one of the downsides of that for the New Zealand economy is that we don't have very many billionaires sucking the life out of the economy. It's that different, like I wasn't raised with the idea that my goal in life was to accumulate. I'm not saying that I don't want nice things around me. Of course I do. I want beauty. I want comfort. But I have no desire to go after the accumulation of resources. I want to be part of an ecosystem of transformation. Back to you, Monica.
Good. I'm glad you said that because I've always been motivated by transformation and impact. And I think women really are motivated by impact and inclusion and helping us transform and evolve. I mean, we give birth to the beings on the planet. So we're interested in that, in creation and changing what needs to happen to be more inclusive of our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being. And it's really, we've been the guiding light to all the successful men that have come out into the world. They've always had a wife that was standing behind them, taking care of their personal life so they could go do their things. And nothing wrong. It's just that I don't see myself being able to step into the world and be this high flying, I got to make my $1 million or my $1 billion. I don't care about that.
Well,
I've already actually transcended the world. I mean, I've come back after a huge spiritual transformation that happened 20 years ago. I'm like, I know this is an illusion, but I'm here to have the impact that I'm here for. And that's what I care about. And it pisses me off sometimes that I don't have the money to do it.
Well, and this is
there's no backing to do this kind of thing. Not that it's not there.
That's something that I'm definitely working on, and my ecosystem is definitely working on transformation in terms of how we, like I'm directly funding a project in Greece, and I think that what I will say is that I think this is maybe important for us to say out loud, because I don't want any women watching this to get the message that it's not a good idea to earn a good income. Please earn the money. And I know we're not saying this, but I want to say it out loud.
No, absolutely.
Earn the money, but what I know for sure is that I will never be a billionaire, and the reason I will never be a billionaire is because if I did happen to grow my business to that level, which I have no question I could, I ain't interested in keeping that money.
Right.
I want that money that energy, because that's all money is. I would want that energy to be flowing forward into the systems that I want to help uplift. So, and it's just so hilarious because I was just doing some money work this morning and I've got a new affirmation around it. My current dream is to buy a decent chunk of land here in British Columbia, which you need a decent dream to do that because BC land ain't cheap, I tell you that. Because I want to create a physical legacy of where women can gather, and what I know for sure is that we need to be in community around this, because so many of us are working in countercultural ways. And then for those of us in the online world, we get these repeated messages that it could look like this. And it's like, it's all bullshit.
Well, I actually lived in a spiritual community for 12 years, and it was extraordinary to have that kind of focused intent, for those years with an ascended master, and we were here to heal. We came into the world to heal, to bring about the message of Course in Miracles, and it was really, we were all just dedicated to that. and that purpose. I think a lot of women feel they're dedicated to a purpose. They may not know what that purpose is, but they know they got to find it, because without it, they're dead and they're burning out and they can't climb the corporate ladder. And, maybe they can, and they're CEO of whatever. And then they go home at night and they're very unhappy. Just say it that way. And I've coached a few of them, so I get it. So I think what's missing is our femininity. What do you think is missing?
Oh gosh, so much.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. I
Yeah.
mean, although having said that, no, I think actually if I was to look at it through a different lens, there's actually nothing missing, because we've already got wholeness. It's already there. We're just not connected to it. And I think that what you're talking about, purpose, is bang on. And I have I've had an interesting kind of evolution with my idea of purpose. And I do believe that we have bigger purposes in life, absolutely. And I also believe that our purpose is essentially unfolding moment to moment in terms of what we put our intention on. So, for example, that if I look at, say, an example of Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and what I know for sure, knowing her personally, but also seeing her policies, is that one of her fundamental purposes is to have love, to express love, to be vulnerable, to show a more holistic example, to be genuinely present to what's unfolding. When there was the awful, tragic terrorist attack in New Zealand, which was an attack on the Muslim community, to watch her genuinely showing up in those spaces, and for her to understand that her job was to connect at a human level, one-on-one, with the people impacted. And for that to come from such a genuine, vulnerable place of actually not giving a stuff about her image. Like it wasn't curated. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to, her team wasn't going, oh, how can we make this look as good as it possibly could?
Thankfully.
It was that genuine human connection. And I think that that is also what's missing, if we, this is a leadership podcast, so I'll bring it straight back to leadership, that we have these really unhealthy, unhelpful ideas about what leadership looks like. And having led, in participatory environments, and what I mean by that is in circle, in places where there's kind of a leader in every chair. And I've also been at the front of the room a lot. I've also been in very formal leadership roles within big organizations too. I used to work for Imperial Oil. That was my last corporate job. Talk about like a gross environment, which was just exemplified everything that is gross to me. But it was this bubble of false reality. I would love more leaders, and I would love us to be creating more spaces for leaders to be able to show up and say things like, I'm actually not sure how we're going to solve this, but here's what I know. If we all get into a room together, we'll be able to figure it out. Or we can figure this out together. Rather than an idea that we've been sold this in our political systems around the idea that, again, one particular ideology is going to run into town, they've got the answers. Well, generally it seems to exclude 50% of the population, at least in the US context.
Yeah.
So I would love leaders who weren't so gosh darn sure of themselves. And who were able to be vulnerable and human, and that we allowed that. I mean, if you look at America, which I think is just such a visible example of how this goes down, a leader that steps out in that way in the US context is crucified.
Yeah.
Crucified.
Yeah. In spite of Brene Brown.
In spite of, well, but you see, here's the thing too. We often want to consume things like Brene Brown. Like we want to consume things rather than living them. Oh, I hope I wasn't doing the middle finger there. I was doing that finger. And that's why we need practice grounds, because if we don't have a lived experience of what it looks like and feels like to show up in vulnerability as a leader, we can't go out there in the world and show that. And that's why, so for me, and I know that you're doing the same in your work, creating these experiences where people can have the experience of what it feels like to lead in this way so for me in the dojo community, for me in some of the other communities that I'm leading, I know that in a way the process itself is the product, because as women, we don't have the experience of leading in a way that doesn't look patriarchal. And I could talk about this all day, obviously, but I know you probably want to finish. So
no, but it's a really important point that we haven't discovered how to do that yet. That we're learning together, as
Yeah.
like in your group or in the groups that I'm forming too, like masterminds. We're not doing the same thing that Andrew Carnegie did. Like we're not here to like create a steel empire, but perhaps we do need to use the principles of like think and grow rich kind of thing. But rich to me is a word that implies freedom to be myself, to bring my work into the world, to have time for children, to have time to go for walks, had time to travel and just enjoy this amazing planet without thinking about, oh, what am I doing wrong? And how can I make sure that I take care of every little thing before I go? I mean, it's totally insane. I'm a very free spirit. Like I don't even know what I'm doing for Thanksgiving yet, and it's like 2 days from now. So it's like I want to live in a spontaneous world where I get to just follow my heart.
Let's speak to that just for a moment before we finish, because what you're speaking to is the truth. We actually live in a spontaneous world. We're in a relationship with this planet. We don't control it. Like, we're in a relationship with these environments we're in, and we've created all of this, and we can create whatever the frick we want. If we want a more beautiful world, then we can begin creating that. And that's, I think, when I talk about purpose, like I want to feel, and I work with people, I work with all kinds of people, and I've worked with people who really are working in the most horrific situations with the most difficult problems we face as a species. Mm-hmm. And we also have to approach those spaces with some joy, with some beauty. And this is not like if we could have all been sitting around at the beginning together going, right, what kind of world do we want to create? Oh, I want to create one where we're all stressed out all the time, and where I finish my work day and I have to go to the gym because that's self-care, because I have to recover from this bullshit system I'm in, and then God, I have to squeeze out some energy for my family. So, blah, blah. We wouldn't have created this.
And open that bottle of wine because I'm so like out of touch with what I want.
That's right. Because I'm so far removed from what my heart wants.
Yeah.
And it's the same for men. I do not believe that men want to be in a world where they feel like they have to dominate, control, be responsible for everything, fight for territory. We've also magnified the less desirable qualities in the males of our species as well. I don't think any of us want collectively what we've created. And it's now coming at a big price for us as a species. We face existential threats in all directions. And there's one more that I want to name before we close out, because it kind of is one of the ones that, and I know a lot of this can feel esoteric if you haven't experienced being in the kinds of spaces we're in as well. It can feel really abstract what we're talking about. We don't just face the threat, and it's funny how we look at it through the lens of threat, because it's only a threat to us. The planet's going to do what the planet does. It's going to carry on. Sure. The other existential threat we're facing is digital intelligence, and there's some really interesting information about this, but the dominant species on the planet wins, and we are, if not already, not the dominant species, the dominant intelligence on this planet anymore. Digital intelligence is, but what digital intelligence will never have, ever, is our capacity to feel and experience emotion and to love and to create beauty the way we create it. And so there is not just a nice to have. These aren't just nice to have. The ability to bring forth these ways of being will have a direct bearing on our surviving and thriving as a species. So
I
it's
love
not
that you
soft
said that.
stuff.
I love that you said that. When you said that, what came to mind for me was when we went from analog to digital in music, and then we lost so much frequency. We lost so much of the real sound that everybody's going back to turntables now because we couldn't hear. It was like we lost a lot of our ability to hear certain ranges of sound, and that's how artificial intelligence feels to me too. It's like, well, we can create this thing and we can heal these diseases, but then we are also creating diseases at the same time because our minds aren't whole yet. And it's very like all this advanced science is all great, but until we embrace our heart and know that, oh, it's not just about me and what I want, it's about the whole species and where we're going. And I just don't get in, I can't get into what everybody's all excited about, this latest thing, with Meta or whatever that Facebook's doing. I'm like, I don't want an artificial world. I want to live in this. This is already created by God. Why do I have to screw around with it? I don't want to play God. I want to be myself and be my whole self right here where I am.
And this is the imperative.
Nobody's questioning it. They're
well,
just like,
and we
isn't
need
this great? We're going to go to this next level of blah 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 technology.
Well, we need to be very. We need to urgently upgrade ourselves. It's Elon Musk talks a lot about this, and he's like, it's inevitable, and he's correct. It's inevitable that digital intelligence will advance in terms of it becoming directly parts of our bodies. It's already kind of happened. I mean, how many of us are like, this is an extension of our physical body?
Yeah.
And
right.
What he's saying is that we do need to be afraid of that if we don't have our shit together, because this intelligence will consume us.
Yes.
However, it's like any healthy relationship, and maybe this is a perfect way to kind of end it, or to help understand this idea. Like, it's like we could look at a marriage. If you are entering into that kind of intimate relationship as two whole human beings who can meet and create something more beautiful as a result of your wholeness together, amazing. But actually, that's not how most of it is. If we're able to upgrade ourselves so that we can meet this intelligence with our whole intelligence, then I believe we can create something more beautiful as a result together. But if we don't get our shit together pretty quick, then we're going to lose. And
we already have in some ways. I think and I will end it soon, but I just want to say that, a lot of social media and the stuff that we have, the way our children are just so connected, having to look, and then they go through like being shamed or bullied or judged by people constantly, 24/7. Used to be just when they showed up in a certain class where the bully was. Now it's just constant. And I just think it's really, 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 really scary. And that's why there's so much anxiety and so much violence in the world right now.
And let me just show everyone watching, I'll give you a little practical tip here at the end, because I'm forming a different relationship with my technology right now, very consciously. And again, like most of this is, if we can bring this stuff into the realm of consciousness so that we can more actively work with it and make some choices. So what I've done is I put almost all of the apps on my phone and now over in like where you have to search them up. Okay. And I put the ones that I use most of the time into little boxes here. So I've got, when I pick up my phone, firstly, I've got this clear space, and I'm going to put a little affirmation in here into that clear space, actually. Okay. Like, something like I love you or something like that. And, but what this is so cool is because I can no longer pick up my phone and just mindlessly click on something, because I have to actually go through, I have to intentionally pick one of these, and then I have to click on Facebook to get to it, or I have to pick one of these and click on my email to get to it. So it's been really interesting, this little experiment I'm running. It's caused me to have a more conscious relationship with my phone. Yeah. And it's kind of unhooked me, because I can't just look down and go, oh, Facebook notification, and then, it's a way more conscious choice, and it feels so much better. Like I feel like I'm almost putting my phone in its place.
That's really awesome. I think we got to really, really watch it, because even I feel like I'm on it so much now. I mean, I do something I'm on an app called Clubhouse a lot because it's people talking and having conversations and connecting energetically. And to me, it's like, thank you, God. Like I just, at any time, 24/7, I can get on and have a conversation about vulnerability or about, what we're talking about. And these conversations are actually happening. There's lots of everything that's happening on there, but you can find those people who are real and are really making something happen in the world by joining, you know. And I want to share like just something real quickly because I love what you're up to, Morna, and I love being in your circles because you're so super intelligent and focused on what your purpose is, and you really are about revolutionary change by going here and deeper, deeper and deeper here, because that's the only way it's going to work.
That's
And
right.
I think our children feel it too. My kids are grown now, but they're 30 and 27, and they're incredibly creative. They're very connected to their hearts. I made sure of that, and very compassionate human beings. And they're in this world too, but they're creatives, so they're creating music and art and the things that make life worth living, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I just want to thank you so much for being here and I learned so much just from talking to you, even though I've been around you for about a year now. It's like,
Funny.
oh my God, there's more, there's always that deeper conversation that I think a lot of us really want to have, but don't even know where to begin. We're so brainwashed by the media and by, oh, you got to do it this way or do it that way. And it's like,
Well, and oftentimes, and this is why I kind of went on a limb and created something called a dojo, which, I wanted to throw up in my mouth when I first came out with that, because I'm like, really? You're going to put that into the world? And I'm like, yeah, because firstly, I think and I know that you have a direct relationship to this because of your own spiritual path, we can't bypass what it takes to get to these places. Like we need to go through it, and we need more expanded periods of time for that to happen. Like it doesn't happen in like and definitely this again, I've been teaching for sort of 20 years, and yeah, there's so much merit in going through a more intense like period of learning. And there's huge merit in being in these spaces where we have enough space to be able to break down some of the thick layers that we've put on and our defensive routines and all of these things that I know for sure that most people working with me are going to go through some level of that to get to the pearls,
yeah,
and then keep going through that cycle. And so I do believe in the transformative power of being in circle, being in conversation, and being in spaces where it's actually safe to say everything.
yeah,
Because everything is there for a purpose, right?
yeah.
And not have to modify all of that. And also, I feel like there's one more thing I want to say, which is that. And I'm going to use a birth analogy here. Like for those women who have given birth or even thinking about the idea of giving birth, it hurts. Just spoiler alert, in case in case you haven't done it, but it's a classic example of something that we've turned into a problem as a species, and a medical problem, and something to be fixed, and that pain to be fixed. The reason I bring it up is because we are fundamentally designed as women to experience that pain and to be okay.
Yeah.
And this is not a judgment around anyone who has chosen any way, shape, or form to give birth. And I think we've kind of normalized this idea that the way to get through life is by avoiding pain.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not like that is such a righteous pain and such a gift, that pain. And so the reason I'm bringing it up is because the kind of territory that Monica and I are talking about, it can be frickin' uncomfortable. And I'd like to invite some normalization around that.
Yeah.
As part of the real path, like if you want to experience joy beyond joy, then you probably need to have a contrasting experience of like this is life, this contrast.
Mhm.
So it's all good. even though
It's
it
all
sucks.
good. It's part of our evolution is to go through that moment of, I called it like the schism, where you actually believe you're a separate being, and then you go through your awakening and you realize, there's no such thing as separation. But you can't talk about that. You can't teach it. You have to go through it.
You have to go through it. You have to go through it. You have to go through it.
And thankfully you have to go through it to really, because otherwise we're just all in our heads all the time, making stuff up and pretending we know stuff that we have no idea about.
That's right. Our brains are really good at that.
Yeah.
Our brains are really good at that. Well, my dear.
Thank you so much, Morna. What an incredible conversation. I cannot wait to put this out there. We're going to, this is like the beginning of 2022 for me, like starting a podcast where I have these amazing conversations and doing it live online and seeing how to even do that. I don't have I'll be shown apparently.
Well, I love that. And live is where it's at. Like,
it is.
Because that's actually how life works too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's right. We just show up.
And something happens, and
right. Yeah. And because we come together, this thing happens, and it's the joining of purpose. And
that was beautiful, rich conversation. I feel really blessed that you invited me to
chat. I'm so glad you came, because wow, this is like, now I get why I'm doing this.
Me too. All right, my love. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.